Getting a business off the ground requires data-driven strategy and truly exceptional product. But entrepreneurs know there is a lot more to building a business than analytics and sleek design.
We want to know what makes founders tick, how they pivot to tackle the hard stuff, what keeps them up all night, and what keeps them going each day. I'm Jenny Rudin.
And I'm Katie Demo, and we're the co-founders of Brass Clothing and your hosts for Making It Happen, a show where we have raw, honest conversations with other founders just like ourselves.
Join us for fly-on-the-wall access to intimate discussions about what it's really like to start, run, and grow a business. This is Making It Happen.
It may be 2021, but it's still not easy for women to break into male-dominated industries. Just ask Olivia Landau. She's the founder and CEO of The Clear Cut.
Olivia is a diamond expert, a GIA graduate gemologist, and a fourth-generation jeweler who's worked at Tiffany Co. and in the diamond wholesale industry. Clearly, she knows a thing or two about diamonds, so there's no question why her friends asked her to start designing their dream engagement rings.
Now, after founding The Clear Cut, Olivia is shaking things up, not just with her direct-to-consumer business, but also as a woman disrupting the male-dominated diamond industry.
Welcome, Olivia.
We like to start each episode with sort of setting the stage. Tell us a little bit about your background and your business and how you got started.
So I grew up around diamonds and jewelry my whole life. So I come from 4 generations of diamond cutters and dealers on my dad's side. He's originally from Antwerp, Belgium, which used to be the diamond cutting capital of the world. And then my mother and father started their own antique jewelry business. So I grew up around it, but I really, never thought I would get into it myself. My parents were immigrants. They, didn't have any formal higher education, and they had dreams and aspirations for me to do other things, like go into a corporate environment, go to college. And they were like, the diamond business is dying. There's no future for it. It's just not something that we are interested in you getting into. So I grew up around it. I was always intrigued by it, but it was never something that was in my life plan. But I graduated from NYU and I was really confused about what I wanted to do with my life and my career. And since I always had this interest, I decided to enroll at GIA. It was a 6-month program to become a graduate gemologist. And I thought this could be a good way to maybe get into a corporate environment in jewelry, not actually be a jeweler. So once I enrolled, I really fell in love with diamonds and gemstones. I found my passion immediately. I guess it was just in my blood all along. And I decided this is definitely something I wanted to pursue. So while I was there, I also luckily accidentally met my now husband and co-founder, Kyle. He comes from a very different background than me. He had founded a fair trade diamond mine in Sierra Leone, and he was sent by his investors to GIA to learn about diamonds, and we met during that same time. So he went back to Africa. I actually started my career at Tiffany on the engagement floor, on the flagship store in Manhattan. And that's where I really developed a passion for bridal jewelry, engagement rings specifically. Just loved the whole process, working with couples. They were so happy, and diamonds were always my favorite. So that is definitely when I decided that's the direction I wanted to pursue. So after Tiffany, I really wanted to get my hands a bit dirtier, work more with the actual product than purely sales. So I was working in wholesale, and at the same time, there was the Ebola epidemic in West Africa. So Kyle had to return back to the US. He decided to enroll in business school at Columbia. And there was this weird phenomenon where all of his classmates, wanted to get engaged around the same time. So they would always ask him if he knew a guy that could help get a good deal on a ring because he had a previous background in the industry. And I happened to be that guy because I was working in wholesale. So he'd refer all of his classmates to me. I'd help educate them on, the do's and don'ts and 4 C's and help them pick out their diamond and create their custom ring. And through that, I realized that most people didn't know the first thing about buying a diamond. So that's what prompted me to start the Clear Cut, first as an educational blog that just made diamond buying, easy to understand, what to know before coming to work with me. And then from there, I started posting some of the finished ring designs on Instagram. And that's where it really kind of took off. Strangers started following the account. It wasn't just my friends. And then people started DMing, asking if I could create their custom rings for that. I still had a full-time job. At this point, I left working in wholesale and I was a gemologist at a startup. So I was working full-time, but I was doing this like before, after work, during my lunch breaks. So it was pretty overwhelming and it was kind of hard to balance both a full-time job and this growing side business. So we recognized there must have been a white space in the market where, people were seeking out custom experiences through social media. So we decided, my husband now and I, but at the time we weren't married, to quit our jobs and decided to go into the Clear Cut full time and give it a shot. So this was in January of 2018, and I'm a bit more risk adverse than he is, and I really wanted something. I really wanted to get into an accelerator or something a little bit more formal of a program because I'd never done this before. Our families weren't like 100% on board, and we had no income coming in.
When you say your families weren't 100% on board, obviously you shared a little bit at the beginning about how even though diamonds are a family business for you, your parents weren't necessarily pushing you towards that, maybe quite the opposite. They wanted you to take a different career path. So what were those first conversations like when you told your family, I'm thinking about doing this full time?
I don't think they took it very seriously until we got into this accelerator, Techstars in New York. Mm-hmm. And I had promised that if we got in, and I didn't think we would, that I would quit my job and we would dedicate our time full time. So it was a really difficult conversation. It was over Thanksgiving that we found out we got in, and my dad was with with Kyle's family. So we were all kind of together. And I remember it being like super tough to saying that like, hey, I'm going to start this business with my boyfriend who I'm not married to. We're not engaged, and we're going to quit our jobs, and we're going to not make any money, and we're going to try to do this like dream startup, and it may or may not work out. And so it was pretty tough because I had a really good job and I had worked really hard to get to where I was. And they were like, why don't you just continue doing it as like a side hobby? Like it's going really well. But I would have really regretted not trying and like taking that step. And I could have always, I justified it being like, I can always like get another good job, but this is like a moment and an opportunity that I would like forever regret if I didn't try.
And you knew that at the time. You already had a sense that if you didn't take this plunge, you were going to regret it.
Yeah, I had already, I never dreamt that we would even get into this accelerator, and the fact that and it was so competitive. So the fact that we had this opportunity, I would have, forever been guilty to not take this
risk,
take the try and take the risk. Yeah.
And can I ask, do you think that your dad had fears about you getting into this industry because it is so male dominated?
Yeah, I think because the business that has been the way it is for generations is just, it wasn't, the way they did business is not how like the normal consumer of our generation like interacts with jewelry or likes to buy jewelry. And it was dying, like the business was slowing down, like the way he knew the business. And so I think he had fears that like there wouldn't be growth potential for me. Like maybe people wouldn't take me seriously because I didn't have experience, or, a lot of younger people who were getting into the business were going into their family's business. They weren't starting their own. And I don't think he like totally understood like what social media was or anything like that.
Did you have a sense that you were actually bringing something new to the table, or could bring something new to the table in terms of a strategic approach to building your business? And what, if anything, does being a woman give you the upper hand in that?
I think being like a millennial woman really gave me an upper hand because I understand the client. Like I am the client. Like everyone that was getting engaged at this particular time are my peers. Like we grew up like online, shopping online, even for larger purchases. We're comfortable like navigating through social media. We want, as much education as possible to make informed purchases. So I understood I understood our consumer really well because I am our consumer. So I knew how to talk to them. I knew aesthetically what they were looking for, the type of experience they were looking for. So I think that's what gave us an upper hand versus, more old school or like traditional businesses.
So did you find yourself kind of like going between these two worlds where you were feeling very connected to the customer and you knew exactly what she wanted, and then you had to kind of go back to this old world of the wholesalers and sort of like bring them forward? Was that sort of how the interaction went?
It's a daily struggle and interaction still, because most of the business and most of our partners that we work with are still like in the Stone Age. Like things are still done on handshake agreements, pen and paper. People are still like not even fully like online, which is insane. So
dive into that a little. What do you mean? Yeah. What do you mean pen and paper?
A lot of our jewelers, like when we would first start out, like we would give them the piece and like the design to create, and they would just take like a little piece of paper and be like, I'm giving you a 2-carat diamond and this is what we're going to make. And they sign their signature and they give you a carbon copy piece of paper back, and you hold on to that until it's delivered.
Wow.
That's crazy.
That's wild.
That's still how it works, and it's insane. So
you go from that, you go from like a back room, not neon light, fluorescent light office with like a shred of paper and some numbers on it and someone's signature, which is probably illegible.
Yeah.
And then you go back to your office and you're on social media presenting a completely different face.
Exactly. Like a bottleneck in our business has always been, we still have to work with partners in the industry, our manufacturers, a lot of our suppliers. Some people are more far along than others, but that's why we spent this entire past year building technology, not only like to make our customer facing experience more elevated, but also we built a ton of back-end tools that help our suppliers and help us be able to scale with them.
What are some of those tools?
Yeah, so now like for our whole production team, instead of doing it like that old school way, like we have QR codes that track where everything is along the, whole process and cycle. We have like a whole inventory manager. When, there's pricing adjustments in the market, it happens like automatically. Like, so we were forced to like build this tech because it didn't exist in the market and didn't exist in the space. And we needed it in order to continue to grow and scale and make our gemologists' time, used the most efficient as possible.
Are you met with resistance, or are they welcome to this new technology that you're bringing in?
So far, everyone has been really welcoming to it because it helps their business. It helps them stay organized. And, they just didn't have the time or money or energy or idea to come up with it. So now whenever we present like a new idea, everyone is like really excited about it because it's only to help each other.
You mentioned that one of the advantages of being a woman in this industry is that you are the customer. What about other advantages maybe? Or have you been met with any adversity throughout as your career has been built? Do the wholesalers that you now interface with not take you seriously because you are the client? Or tell us a little bit about those dynamics, some challenges you've faced and how it's worked to your advantage.
Yeah, I think in the beginning, it was definitely apparent because many of the people that I work with in the business, I'm probably the same age as their own daughter, and don't have like a ton of life or business experience. So Um, it's kind of a double-edged sword because I think it's an advantage and a disadvantage at the same time to be underestimated. So that's definitely what I felt, especially in the beginning. I think now, with the growth that we've seen and the business that we've built, that people are starting to gain that respect and like acknowledgement, and a lot of people that maybe were weary of working with me or with the business now are like trying to approach us to create partnerships.
And when you have felt underestimated, what do you call on? I mean, when I'm noticing someone kind of condescending to me, or I'm interpreting their behavior as belittling, my nerves are on edge. But I'm curious if that's ever happened to you in your career thus far, and as a founder, and what tools in your toolkit you rely on to get through those meetings, or even if it's a bigger challenge, get through it over the course of a few days or weeks.
I think in the beginning, when I was underestimating myself, it would lead to like a lot of insecurity and I wouldn't know if I really like truly believed in myself 100%. But I think now when I'm faced with that, it just fires me up and I want to like prove people wrong, and I just want to work harder, and like it just motivates me more than anything. And I think that comes from having a really good and strong support system. Like I'm really thankful that I get, my husband Kyle has been a supporter from the beginning, and he's always like, you can do it. You can do anything that you put your mind to, like just prove people wrong. And like our families have been, on this journey with us. And, just as I was a little unsure in the beginning as they were, they've come pretty full circle, and they're super supportive now too. So I think it's just having, those people to rely on that you can like bounce ideas off of.
One of the things that we think is really important is the things that you tell yourself on a daily basis, and especially the things that you tell yourself when times are really tough. So what is your self-talk, or what was your self-talk? Now you probably don't need it as much, and you're probably not relying on it as much. But what was it during those early days when you were still a little bit unsure? How did you keep going through the hard stuff?
It's like almost cheesy, but it's really like you have to just fully like bet on yourself and say like, if I just put 110% into whatever I'm doing and I'm fully dedicated to it, there's no way I'm not going to succeed. Maybe success isn't exactly how I've outlined it or envisioned it, but there's no way that I'm not going to succeed at what I'm doing if I'm fully dedicated and focused to it. Then that is my singular goal. And I remember even like early stages, I would like just be like, not even like meditating, but like thinking to myself, like, okay, like I'm going to envision and like, I don't know, manifest, like, this is what like success looks like. This is what I have to do. And I'm just going to work so hard until I get to it. And then once you get to whatever goal you set, then you create like your next goal.
It's not silly at all. I think that like mantras and vision and like vision boarding or whatever, I think that's actually like some of the best things that you can do to help yourself move forward. 100%.
I still do it now. I think like manifesting and envisioning like what that success looks like to you, it really helps motivate you to like push yourself to the next level.
100%. Very cool.
I want to dig into something you just said, though, which I actually think is also crucial to being a successful entrepreneur, which is, on the one hand, you have to be able to envision that success. Yeah. What does that look like to you? On the other hand, you have to maintain a certain amount of flexibility. Yeah. Sometimes you could be working 110% for something, but it spirals off into a different direction, or you see a new avenue open up for you. How important do you think that is to entrepreneurship? How important is that flexibility and that willingness to pivot and be agile?
It's the most important thing. You have to be flexible. You have to be able to pivot, and you have to be able to recognize when something isn't working. Because sometimes I feel like some downfalls of entrepreneurs are that you are singular focused on your goal and you want to achieve it, but you can't continue pushing something that isn't working. Like the number one thing you can do is recognize if something isn't working and see like how you can adjust and pivot to make it successful or like create something from it. I think, we were really like on our path. Like my goals were like, I was checking things off my list and we were like going through the motions, and then COVID hit. And that was a real like kick in the gut in the beginning. And I think that kind of really opened my eyes on like, wow, like I have to figure out what's next, or like how to pivot, or what we should do, because this is like just thrown me off my track for this moment.
Obviously, you're a woman of the world today, and women can do anything and are doing anything, especially in the jewelry business. But being at the GIA, I would assume, getting your certificate there, I would assume that was your class mostly women? Was it mixed men and women? Who was teaching the class?
So it was pretty mixed, like men and women. And I would say it was mostly children of people that had family businesses that they were going to go into. Yes. That's like, it's a very niche school to go to. So that's typically like the demographic of who like knows about it and who goes there. We had two different courses. It starts with like diamonds, and then it goes into colored stones. And our diamonds teacher, he was a man that worked like in retail for many years. And then our colored stones teacher was also someone who I think worked in the lab at GIA.
And you mentioned that most students were going to work for family businesses. Were there any students at that time who were thinking about starting their own companies? And were they men? Were they women?
Nobody in my class was thinking about starting their own business. If they weren't working for a family business, they, were working at their local retail store and, wanted to like get a promotion or like, have more knowledge in their sales. So that was another route why people would go there.
She's a true pioneer.
Yeah,
you really are. This is very cool.
Well, I remember at that time I was graduating and I asked my teacher, and I was like, what's next? Like, what are my career options? Like now that I have my GG? And he was like, well, you can either work at a retail store or you can work in the lab. And I was like, I don't really want to do either of those things. So
yeah, that's awesome. So it's really interesting. You not only like had to crack your way into this male dominated industry, but then you basically carved your way through it and made this whole new path for yourself.
I think it's funny because, when you're growing up, you're like, what do I want to be when I grow up? And what I'm doing now didn't exist when I was younger. Like I could have never imagined like, oh, I'm going to create a diamond jewelry company through social media. Cause like that was not something that existed until I was like in college.
I feel like one of the really interesting aspects of your story is that you started from an educational standpoint. And I remember, this is just a little bit of a personal vignette, but when I was getting married, and my husband and I also went to designing in New York City at a family friend's wholesale business. And walking into that room, literally neither of us knew anything. And you had the presence of mind when your peers and your husband's friends from school were going through the process as well, that your first thing wasn't, let's just sort of smoke and mirrors this and slip them a piece of paper with a number on it, like take it or leave it. It was to educate and to provide people with tools to make these pretty momentous, significant purchases. Pretty momentous, very momentous. So I feel like that shows a very different approach to the business, one where you're empowering and incorporating the customer into the experience. Tell us a little bit about where that all started for you. Obviously, the blog was first. So can you share a little bit about what your frame of mind was going into that?
Yeah, 100%. That's still a big component of our business. So yeah, like I said, back in the day, the diamond industry, there was always this thought that like, hey, you don't want to share too much information with your client. They don't need to know so much.
Why do you think that was the case?
I personally don't know. Maybe it's a different mindset from the previous generation that best. The client doesn't really need to know, and you want to sell whatever is in your inventory in that moment, and just it's good enough. Where I, as a consumer, I want to know everything, especially if I'm going to make such a significant, not only financial, but like you said, momentous purchase, something that you're going to wear forever on your hand. So we've always come from an education first perspective. We still have our classrooms every week that we release. We have our Wednesday Q&As. It's just something that is core to our business that we want to make sure a lot of our clients that follow us know more than, salespeople at retail jewelry stores in their local town that they go to. They'll question, they know everything. So that means they can come into the purchase feeling, really empowered. And that's also why they feel more comfortable purchasing remotely. It adds a level of trust with us and our gemologists and our business, that we're, pretty transparent about everything, and that we're always going to vie for the highest quality and help them, prioritize based on their specifications, and they can trust that we're not going to sell them something that we don't feel confident that we would wear ourselves,
I mean, I think that transparency point is the thing right now.
100%.
Yeah. Making sure as brands that we're giving our customers all the tools they need to make the best purchase possible and be super confident in it.
Yeah. And our business model is different than a traditional retailer. We don't have a set inventory that we're trying to push or sell. So our incentives are aligned with our clients. Our goal is to just partner with them and find them the best diamond for the specifications they're looking for and their budget.
Do you work mostly with couples? Do you work mostly with just men, just women? Who are you doing most of your interaction with on a customer service standpoint?
So I would say it's both. I would say in a heterosexual couple, most times we're found by women on social media. They're our followers, they're a target demographic, they're who we are creating pieces for. And a lot of times, the man comes in alone. Rarely does he not come with a laundry list of specifications and things that she has PowerPointed and made lists about. And I think, that's changed, and there's been a huge shift in the past couple of years where people don't come in completely blind. If they do, they're on social media, they know exactly what they want to the T of not only their diamond, but the aesthetic and design that they want. And now we are working with, most of the time we're working with the couples together. So they're picking out their diamonds. A lot of times they're designing their rings together. And a lot of times they're financially both contributing to it. So I think that it has changed a lot from the traditional idea of an engagement ring, where it's here's the surprise and you're going to get what you get and you're going to like it,
I'm curious if you could describe some of the innate qualities that you think you have that allow you to be successful and keep going every day with building your business.
So it's funny because I never aspired to be an entrepreneur. I never envisioned myself to be one. Actually, it's my growing up, my mom was because my parents had their own business, they were you could never have your own business. You'd be a great employee, but you could never handle the stress of having your own business. I grew up with that mentality, but I think some qualities that at least I've developed over this journey that I think has helped me is I've always been very, very driven and extremely ambitious and hardworking. So even when I was younger, I've always been very self-motivated. I never had to have my parents tell me to do my homework or do this or that. I was I'm innately self-motivated. And I think that is something that you need if you're an entrepreneur, because there are so many ups and downs, and sometimes you have to be your own cheerleader. You can feel you're alone on an island a lot of the time. And if you don't have that drive and that innate motivation, it can be very discouraging.
So something that really resonated was that obviously the diamond industry is a historically male-dominated field and with very old school, set in stone, no pun intended ways.
Right.
Fashion has been a lot like that too.
Yes.
And I feel like in the ways that Olivia has really disrupted the diamond industry by owning the business as a woman and really catering and selling to other women and putting the power of the purchase into their hands, speaking to them directly, is really kind of what we're trying to do with Brass.
Yes. I think that, it's very interesting when males are at the very top of a industry where females are the customer.
Yes.
I think that they kind of miss that there is a chance that what the woman really needs can be missed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we do need more women to shake things up.
Yeah. Building brands that empower the consumer feels very of today.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Making an assortment that instills confidence in the purchaser, helping them have the tools they need to make the right decisions.
Right. They're two very similar industries in that way.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Absolutely.
I thought it was very interesting that she was saying that she's not an optimist at all, that she's a realist.
Yeah.
Because I think when you're working in an industry where you are sort of paving the way and you're shaking things up and, it was traditional, it was male dominated, all of these things. And she's basically like, I'm not going to, follow the path that has already been set forth. I'm going to, forge my own way.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible, and this is just a theory, it's possible if you're too optimistic about how easy it's going to be to do that you might get caught up. And the fact that she is such a realist about the challenges that were ahead of her and that she really understood what she was getting herself into, that she was able to continue going, putting one foot in front of the other each day.
Yeah. She also went into this disruption with her new business with her eyes wide open. I think that's kind of what you're driving at. She knew what the history of the industry was. She had been brought up through it.
Right, exactly.
Since her parents obviously come from that world too.
Right.
So she went with her eyes wide open, knowing full well the challenges that she would face. And I think like recognizing also the how valid it is to have a partner who might be a little bit more shoot for the stars. Yeah. And having her feet firmly on the ground. But the secret thing, the magical moment happens in the middle.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And yeah, I love that. A realist, not an optimist, a realist, but not a pessimist either.
Exactly.